What's up, everybody? Welcome to SI Now. It is Thursday, February 23rd. I'm Matt Stryker.
And I'm Maggie Gray. What is this, a throwback Thursday look for you, Matt?
Well, yesterday I was dressed as Aladdin, so today I figured
Senior prom?
there you go, why not?
You look great.
Well, today on the show, we get into big boards, big deals, big vests, and big trouble in Oxford, Mississippi.
Matt, you've called, though, the NBA trade deadline your favorite time of year, which is a total affront to Christmas, opening day, and whenever Game of Thrones is going to come back on the air. But what was the most memorable trade deadline moment, in your opinion?
Well, first I said it's one of my favorite days.
Yeah.
So,
now you want to
as far as the NBA goes, I like 2004. It was a deal between the Celtics, the Pistons, and the Hawks. Rasheed Wallace goes to Detroit. He joins Chauncey Billups, amongst others. And the reason I like this is because that year the Pistons go to the finals, they win. The next year they go to the finals, they take it all the way to 7 games. To me, a trade deadline trade is supposed to make your team better now, and that's what this deal did.
Yeah, and that same vein, my favorite was 2008. Pau Gasol gets traded to the Lakers from Memphis. It was a couple of weeks before the deadline, but still mid-season trade. The Lakers go to the finals that year, lose to KG and Paul Pierce and the Celtics, but then go on and win back-to-back titles. This was, beating the Magic when Dwight Howard was at his apex. Gave Kobe his first title without Shaq. Then they get revenge on the Celtics in 7 games in that second straight finals win. And I agree with you. It made the team better. It was a huge trade, shook everything up. That's my favorite trade in midseason. And we have a special guest who's going to tell us what his favorite trade is. That person is Kevin Harlan, of course. He is one of the voices of TNT. He's going to be on the Knicks-Cavs call tonight. And Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good to be on, Maggie. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, it's trade deadline day in the NBA. You just heard Matt's favorite deadline moment, mine as well. Is there a special one that sticks out to you?
Well, I'll do 2 because one involved a friend of mine and a deal he made, Danny Ainge, up in Boston when he got Isaiah Thomas from Phoenix. And it really kind of changed Boston's fortunes around, put their compass in the right direction. He's now become, instead of just a 6th guy, a scorer off the bench, as Danny imagined, kind of the core of their team. And he's one of the reasons why they are where they are. And then I'm in Cleveland, as you mentioned, and Carmelo Anthony is with the New York Knicks. Mm-hmm. And since that trade was made, it's been a disaster, obviously, for New York. They're 53 games under 500. It was ill thought out when it first happened, when he went from Denver to New York. And we'll see how the day kind of maneuvers here as we get close to that 3 o'clock Eastern deadline.
Yeah, keeping with tonight's game, what are the chances that we could see a walk-across-the-hall trade before tonight's game with Melo and the Cavaliers?
I don't think it's very good, Matt. I'm thinking that right now they're just going to play out the rest of the season, which will give us, I think, a pretty good indication of where the Knicks feel they can be. They've got 5 teams with losing records ahead of them. They're not that far away, really, from the number 8 position in the East. In playoff terms. I don't know if they're going to get the kind of value they want. It may just come down to whether Phil Jackson is so tired of the situation, wants to rid himself of Carmelo, will take basically anything out there and just try to recoup what he has and go into the offseason and look maybe to build.
So, Kevin, sticking with the Cavaliers, do you see any true challengers to them in the Eastern Conference?
Boston might, Maggie, just because of how they're built and the team they've got and the bench they like, and if they stay healthy. Health is going to be everything, I think, for Cleveland. The question is, can they come out of the East in one piece? And I think health becomes the number one question for the Cavaliers. I don't know that they can compete against Golden State with Durant's addition, but when they're healthy, it may be a different story. And, of course, we won't know that until we get into April.
Want to switch gears for a second, Kevin, get away from that Knicks-Cavs game, but talk about something else going on in the NBA. And just because your father was a longtime executive for the Green Bay Packers, very prestigious position, Magic Johnson is now taking over as president of basketball operations for the Lakers. He's been getting some criticism from those who are skeptical that he's going to rise to the occasion. Just because you've seen what it takes to do that job well, what will be Magic's biggest obstacle in getting the Lakers back to relevance?
That's a good question, Maggie. I think it's got to be 24/7 complete immersion into the position. It cannot require anything less. And the good GMs in this league are basketball 24/7. Not that Magic isn't, but Magic has got a lot of businesses going on. I mean, a lot. And that's how he has handled his post-playing time, from a great Hall of Fame career in the league. That team needs, I think, everything that Magic can offer, and I think he's got to surround himself with good people.
All right, well, listen, let's be honest. Many people consider you a legend in the industry. You've been calling sports since the early 80s. You've lent your voice to the NBA, NFL, college football, the Goodwill games, even video games. But many of us here in the office feel that this may, in fact, be your best call ever. Have a listen.
Somebody has run out on the field. Some goofball in a hat. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man.
Here comes the blue coat, Kevin.
Oh, they got him.
Here comes
They're coming
the blue
from the
coats.
left. Oh, and they tackle him at the 40-yard line. Oh, that was the most exciting thing to happen tonight.
Legendary Kevin Harlan, absolutely legendary.
Let me ask you, did you have any idea that that call would get the attention that it's earned?
No, Matt. In fact, I felt just the opposite. I was worried about the attention it would get. How would the NFL deal with it? But everyone was okay with it, which is fine. I don't think I'll do it again. But he ran, the guy ran right through the formation. So it was like he was a receiver on the play. And, on TV I wouldn't have done it, but radio, I guess it kind of fit. But one time's enough. I think I'll stop at that.
Well, listen, if some clown runs out on the court tonight when you're calling Knicks Cavs, then we want to hear the play-by-play. That's just coming from your fans. Kevin Harlan, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And, of course, you can listen to Kevin on the call tonight, TNT, 8 p.m. Eastern. It's my favorite call of all time. It is. All right, it goes by many names. The Underwear Olympics, the Westminster Football Show. It's the NFL's Scouting Combine, and it begins exactly 1 week from today. Matt, how dialed in are you to what's going on in Indianapolis?
Well, I'm dialed in, albeit reluctantly. I find these combines are becoming suspect. I really do. I feel like it's just another way for the NFL to exploit these young athletes. They're selling fan access tickets now so kids can run the 40-yard dash. And let me just put this into perspective.
Goodness, you don't want the kids to have some fun.
No,
Matt.
how dare they? If I told you that a guy ran a 5.2 40 and had a 23-inch vertical leap, you'd make a face like you smell sour milk. If I told you that an offensive lineman, that face right there, ran a 4.6 40 with a 30-inch vertical leap, you would salivate. But then I tell you that the guy that ran the 5.2 40's name was Tom Brady, and the guy that ran the 4.6 40 is Tony Mandarich, arguably the biggest bust in NFL history. That's why I feel that a lot of this combine stuff, it's unfair pressure on these kids, on these athletes, and good data does come out of it, but I'm a little on the fence, a little dodgy on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting comparison to bring up because it's not foolproof, but the combine is absolutely necessary. And when, I've covered 4 of them, and really what the combine is it's a league-wide convention without the hype of the Super Bowl. First of all, you have to do the medical exams. I mean, this is not just going to be about Dalvin Cook's shoulder this year, but even going back to like Rob Gronkowski, in his days back in Arizona when he was coming out and his back was such a huge topic of conversation, and how would he be able to go through that back injury? The combine is huge. Teams interview players because they want us to know what's upstairs. They want to get a vibe on these guys. You have someone like Dede Westbrook who's been arrested twice for domestic violence. You want to sit down and look this gentleman and this young man eye to eye and see what he has to say for himself. And then just because I've witnessed it, Matt, it's everything but the prospects when you're in Indianapolis. It's 5 square blocks, 3 restaurants, 2 hotels. The entire football world is there. There's a lot of wheeling and dealing that goes on at the combine. There's a lot of times when you can, create relationships. You can talk to agents. You can talk to GMs and coaches. It is about relationships.
No.
I know you're a robot.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
For everyone
Antisocial
else out there,
all the way.
God forbid you have like a handshake, or maybe like split a drink with somebody.
Anti-social media all the way.
Maybe one of those shrimp cocktails over at St. Elmo's. But when we look at this combine, there are a lot of players who have things to prove. Absolutely. To me, it's Mitch Trubisky of UNC with the most to prove. And I'll tell you why. There is no consensus number one quarterback in this draft. And we know the history that teams tend to fall in love with quarterbacks, and it raises their draft stock. But there are a lot of question marks. Obviously, small sample size. This is a guy who only won the starting job this season. Not a very good season for UNC this year. We have questions about his footwork. There's questions about basically everything except for his accuracy. We're not even sure how tall he is. Not that it may matter, but that is something that you want to know, which is the measurables. He's also never called a play. I mean, you had Larry Fedora, the coach of UNC, essentially saying, you know, we didn't have Trubisky calling plays in the huddle. That's something he's going to have to adjust to. So you're going to want to know whether this kid can handle those kinds of new tasks that he's going to have to be prepared for. Listen, Bill Parcells had a formula, right? He said college guys need 30 starts, 23 wins, and a 60% completion percentage for quarterbacks coming out. Trubisky's only got the completion percentage. It's about 68. The other two he doesn't have. It's a major question mark.
Yeah, and the program that he comes out of also says a lot about how will he transition to the NFL.
So UNC, if you're a defensive lineman, if you're almost any other, position, then yes, but he couldn't beat Marquise Williams out for the quarterback position.
For me, I look at the early part of the draft. I look at Jacksonville at number 4, the Jets at number 6, and many people can argue that both of them have running back needs. So that's why a guy like Leonard Fournette comes to mind. He has a lot of injury questions that he needs to answer, ahead of the fact that he may very well be a top 10 pick. There's a lot of money riding on this particular instance for him, and I do believe that the young man out of LSU has the most to prove in this combine, or at least one of the guys with the most to prove.
Oh, absolutely. Played 7 games this year. I mean, listen, we know what he's capable of, but you're right. I mean, how injured is he? And I mean, I think he's going to be absolutely fine transitioning to the next level. I think he's going to be a force in this league. But if you're, an NFL team, you have questions.
Absolutely. That's why we do what we do. Well, the NBA is not the only trade deadline coming up. On March 1st, the NHL's deadline occurs, and one of the great things about this job, aside from sitting next to you, is getting to meet and interact with people that you genuinely admire. And I had that chance. I sat down and I got to talk hockey trades with NHL great Jeremy Roenick. All right, the NHL trade deadline is fast approaching. There are a lot of teams vying for playoff spots and a lot of names being rumored about. So I have someone here that will help me talk about it. Mr. Jeremy Roenick, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here.
Appreciate you. So straight up, a lot of people go right to Colorado. They talk right about Matt Duchene and Gabriel Landeskog. Where do you think those two land, if anywhere?
Well, I would think they have to make a move right now. The Colorado Avalanche have had a nightmare of a season. Yeah. To get rid of some of their top guys, it might be a nice time for a change. Matt Duchene is obviously probably the cream of the crop in terms of talent-wise. Not many faster skaters, more talented players in the league. A nice change of scenery could revive his career right now. And I got to wonder about Landeskog, because Landeskog was the youngest captain in the history of the National Hockey League. And you would think that there's going to be a lot of teams that would like his leadership, like the way that he plays the game. I think they should do it now before the trade deadline. Let them get some wins under their belt to finish the season off. But Shattenkirk, to me, is probably the big the big trade that everybody's
that's where
going
I want to
after,
go next. A lot of people say you win the Stanley Cup on the other side of the blue line, and the Blues have Shattenkirk. He's been linked to the Rangers. Even I've heard linked to Toronto. Mm-hmm. Do you see Shattenkirk being moved, and if so, where?
I do, and a lot of people are talking whether Shattenkirk should stay in St. Louis because they have a new coach. They've been winning hockey games. You don't want to mess with chemistry, but it's a big risk when you have a player like Shattenkirk. Rumors are he does not want to be in St. Louis. He'll probably say those rumors are wrong.
Yeah.
Is what you have to do. But I think when you have a free agent that is that highly touted and a guy that can help every single team in the National Hockey League because of the style of player he is, because of the talent he has, and the special teams aspect, I would have to think that if you're St. Louis, you can get something valuable in exchange back for Shattenkirk and still have a great chance to win a Stanley Cup and a good run.
Okay, so talk to us about your involvement with Kraft Hockey, Bill.
Yeah, so I'm excited about the NHL, excited about the playoffs, but this is my playoffs. right now, and that's the Kraft Hockeyville competition. This is the third year of its existence. It's just a real treat to go around the country and watch these small markets and these communities that are so passionate about hockey rally behind their community and find out what their community is all about and how much hockey means in their community. So Kraft Hockeyville is going out to find the most passionate hockey community in America. And that's to be said. That's something to be said. It's there's 2,300 arenas, I think, in the United States, and we've had about 1,400 or 1,500 each year that we've done this competition. So go on to crafthockeyville.com, write a little letter, tell us why your community is the most passionate hockey community in the country. Tell us some stories about some kids or about the arena that's in your area, because the winner of the Kraft Hockeyville is going to get $150,000 for arena upgrades to put in for new glass or new Zamboni or new locker rooms for the kids. Always like to have those rinks refurbished, or kids are going to be hanging out in there. And then the chance to hold an NHL preseason game that's going to be aired on NBC in September.
Well, I'm sure their faces are just like mine as a kid growing up in Queens, New York, playing hockey. What you've done for hockey here in the States and around the world is amazing. And if you knew how many championships I won with you in NHL 94, 100%.
Yeah,
man.
I love
Jeremy
it.
Roenick, thanks so much. We
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I told you I was dressed like Aladdin. You like the vest? That's good.
Same thing every day. But here's the thing: did you tell Roenick that you're playing hockey this weekend, like you told me?
No, I did not mention that to Jeremy Roenick that I might be playing hockey this weekend.
You mentioned the Sega 94. Who would you compare your game to? Your hockey game?
Now or then?
Now.
Mark Messier. My captain. Well, listen, I got to tell you, sitting down with Jeremy Roenick was so much fun. I think his work with Kraft Hockeyville is really inspiring. You grew up in a hockey town.
I did.
Like I said, we got to mention NHL 94, but one thing you did not see in that interview is I posed the question about a potential trade between bitter rivals, the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs, and here's Jeremy's response. Yeah. Would Montreal ever do a deal to help Toronto?
Not a chance.
There you go.
Not a chance. And
how about that?
I was kind of surprised. I mean, here's my thing, right? When it comes to teams doing deals with rivals, I mean, isn't it all business? Aren't teams only trying to win a title? I think that people don't remember. Fans have very short memories. If the trade or a deal is going to help your team win, I think the fans would be completely fine with it, whether this player comes from a rival team or not. I mean, with maybe a couple exceptions, like I don't know if Chase Utley's ever coming to the Mets, but just very few exceptions. You know, Jerry Seinfeld has a great line where he said, if you're a sports fan, you're rooting for laundry. And that basically is what it is. You can have your favorite players, but you're rooting for the jersey. So if you're not going to make a trade with a rival that could help your team, I mean, it's a cliche, but you're cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Jerry Seinfeld, what's the deal with all the vests?
He's my favorite.
Well, listen, on the other hand, I like this because there's an old saying, if the blind follow the blind, then both will end up in a pit. I like the fact that Montreal sticks to their guns and they don't chase the almighty dollar, whether it's Canadian or U.S. I think while everyone else is doing the same thing, the Habs fans almost need to appreciate how important the rivalry is and the stand that their organization makes.
Okay, we're looking at this graphic, though. Make a deal with the devil. Look at all of these. I mean, are we even talking about any of that stuff anymore? Honestly. Like, I get this graphic, but does anyone now care that Julius Erving once went from the New York Nets, they weren't even in Jersey then, to the 76ers, Gretzky going
Two of those deals impacted their sports incredibly. The first one and the fourth one, Babe Ruth and Wayne Gretzky.
But thank goodness that Gretzky ended up going to L.A. because that's a reason why hockey exists in California now. You can say there's a reason that hockey exists like in the South now because of that.
The Peter Pocklington.
I think it's a great thing that he ended up going to LA, and it grew the sport.
Their rivalry, talking about the Oilers and the Kings, pales in comparison to the rivalry between the Canadiens and the Maple Leafs. We're talking about some like blood venom rivalry.
Yeah, that's what I say. I think that there are exceptions to the rules. Like I said, with Chase Utley and the Mets, you would just never see that happening. But in terms of Babe Ruth when he was Yankees Red Sox, looking back at these old photos, there wasn't a rivalry.
The rivalry was almost born because of that trade.
Of course, right.
So
I think that also once the Red Sox won, I mean,
it all went away.
It's basically all gone away.
Yep.
Very interesting. I love those old photos, Dr. J.
I wonder if we can get some old photos of you. Did you have the
They've
Dr. J
been
hair back in
burned.
high
They've
school?
been burned.
Come on now, Maggie,
Hairs
come on.
more wide than long. It will be Laramie Tunsil's gas mask bong that will be remembered. But Wednesday, we learned that Ole Miss was capable of even deeper embarrassment. The bong and the damaging text messages implying that Tunsil was given money by Ole Miss coaches reopened the investigation into the Rebels football program. 7 months later, the NCAA handed down their findings. Here they are: 21 total rule violations, along with a lack of institutional control penalty. For more, let's welcome NSI senior writer Andy Staples. All right, Andy, I hate to sound like a jaded sports reporter, but none of these charges are really out of the ordinary, I would say. Paying recruits appears to be the most damaging penalty. What types of penalties do you think will accompany these 21 rule violations?
Well, that's the hard question to answer, Maggie, because the Committee on Infractions is the group that punishes the schools that misbehave, and it's made up of conference officials and school officials, ex-ADs, ex-coaches, that sort of thing. And the membership changes, and what they do to those schools tends to change as the winds blow. So right now, we're sitting in a time when the public is going to look at this and go, well, the public outside of, say, Mississippi State fans, Alabama fans, and LSU fans will look at this and go, what's the big deal? It's $36,000. Who cares? But the schools who make the rules and care about them deeply are going to go, if you don't do something about this, then what's the point? Why are you even there? So that's where the Committee on Infractions is sort of on the horns of a dilemma. With this case and with the North Carolina academic fraud case, everybody's watching them closely, and especially everybody in college athletics, because the people in college athletics like those rules. They want to keep those rules. And so you either enforce them or you don't. There's been a lot of pressure put on the NCAA from other schools to hit Ole Miss hard on this. And what you saw with the slapping them with a lack of institutional control charge, and then the head coach responsibility, which is kind of a new thing where they basically, since I think 2013, have been able to say, oh, you're the head coach. You should have known what was going on, whether you did or not. They hit Jim Boeheim with that, with the Syracuse stuff. So they hit Hugh Freeze with that today. Will they punish them harshly? My guess is they will probably punish them fairly harshly. With Freeze, he could be suspended for a while. He could be suspended to the point where he's basically unemployable and they have to make a change. We'll see what happens with Ross Dork, the AD, because you get hit with a lack of institutional control, the AD doesn't usually survive.
Yeah, it's right on the heels of what you're saying. Obviously, not a good year for Ole Miss on the football field either, right? 2-6 in the conference, 5-7 overall. And even though he beat Nick Saban twice, is this the nail in the coffin for Coach Hugh Freeze?
It's going to be really hard to survive. I mean, if they suspend him for any significant length of time, Ole Miss probably has to do something about that. They probably have to make a change. Now, if it's 3 games and Ole Miss goes into full ride or die mode, then they could keep him. But if they come down and say, we're suspending you for a year, I don't see how you keep a coach who's suspended for a year.
Yeah, ride or die mode is really what we say to ourselves every morning here on the SI Now set.
Exactly.
Yeah, Andy, and just looking ahead to Ole Miss, I mean, if they get hit hard, if they get a lot of penalties, if Hugh Freeze is suspended and then fired, if all these worst case scenarios play out, I mean, how much does this set back the program in the SEC, so uber competitive? I mean, where does this leave the Rebels?
Basically where they were when Hugh Freeze got hired, when Houston Nutt got fired. So that's a very cynical way of saying not really any different. There'd be a stigma attached because they got in trouble, but they still had some fun and won some games that if they hadn't done that, well, maybe they wouldn't have won those games.
Okay, Andy, final one, timeline here. When do you think we're going to know what's going to come down the pike for Ole Miss?
Well, that is the $65,000 question. I'm assuming it will happen before the football season, that they'll have their hearing in front of the Committee on Infractions, and the committee will meet and then render a ruling. They've said they're going to fight stuff, but they've not asked for any more extensions. So basically they have to respond to this notice of allegations that they got yesterday, or that they released yesterday, and then they will go to their hearing before the Committee on Infractions, which is essentially like the trial. But the difference is you don't get due process. things don't have to be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, and you're really sort of at the mercy of that committee.
Wow, sounds like they have a steep hill to climb. And what did I read? Not one, but 2 law firms have been hired by Ole Miss for this one. Andy Staples, SI senior writer. Appreciate your time, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, that is going to do it for this edition of SI Now.
Matt, thanks a lot. Great job today. We're going to be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern with a fresh look at the latest sports news. But until then, stick with SI.com, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. It is trade deadline day, so keep it locked to SI.com. We're going to be refreshing all the news and the rumors. It comes at your way, 3 p.m. Eastern. It's the deadline.
All right.
You're excited.
I am. It's
Calm
my
down,
favorite day of the year.
please.
Chilling now.
Bye, guys.
James drove into the wilderness when a hungry wolf pack surrounded him. To survive, he had to become one of them, expand their territory, and nurse the young. How far will you take the all-new RAV4 Hybrid? Toyota, let's go places.